Hello, and welcome back to another episode on Let's Talk Football Careers with myself, Barry, and today's very special guests, Peter and Stephanie Shilton. Thanks for joining us, guys. How are we doing?
Before we get started with today's podcast, we would like to introduce our sponsor, Kingdom Coatings, the leading roof and wall coating company in the UK, partnered with STV.
Yeah, very good. It's a pleasure to be speaking to you, Barry.
Thanks very much. Well, today's episode for my viewers is going to be a little bit different in the sense that we're going to look at a more personal side of how playing football at the very top level can also have a negative effect on players from Peter's era. So I've spoken to many ex-pros who have been left to their own devices after their playing careers came to an end. Peter has actually had a time of it. He's been to hell and back dealing and recovering with gambling addiction, which has cost him an unknown amount of financial loss, but also he nearly lost everything. Together, Peter and Steph have turned things around and now focus on saving others. In today's chat, Peter and Steph will share their personal experiences and the amazing work they do to help others. I'm just going to put that over here, and I have selected questions which I shall address to each an individual, please. So, Peter, if I could ask you, how did gambling become a part of your life?
I'm not quite sure, actually. I mean, it's something that I've always loved horse racing, for example, and even from a young age. I mean, the atmosphere to race course type of thing. And sometimes it's learned behaviour, or sometimes just something can trigger it off. The actual start of gambling. I think mine was when I was about 9 or 10. We used to go on holiday to Mablethorpe on the East Coast, and my dad, who wasn't a big gambler, he was a greengrocer. Somebody gave him 6 horses to follow, and being my dad, he decided to have a bet on each one to see how they went. And they all won, and it came to the last one, and he won quite a bit of money. I mean, in those days, he was having £5 on or something like that. But this was in the 60s. And I went in the arcade with my younger brother and my mum, waiting for him to put it on a horse that was 12 to 1, and he was going to have £10 each way, which was a very big bet for him. And all I remember is this silhouette at the end of the arcade, coming back with his arms in the air like this, and obviously the horse had won, and he just couldn't believe it. I mean, he immediately gave all his winnings to my mum. But I think that instance, something like that, can just trigger you off. And I started betting, not very big, just occasionally. In my late teens. But obviously, as my life went on in football, it increased until I was betting on the phone in the afternoons.
It's madness. I think there's going back to the era that you played in. Players are protected now. There's advocates, people that are in place like Steph and what you've set up and things. But back then there was nothing then really to help you, and you see it through different players from your era as well. And it's such a tough time. I mean, it's better now. It is a lot better now. But there was so many players that were left to the same issues there, and it's so tough. But would it be okay to ask yourself, Steph, when did you first find out that Peter had a gambling problem?
Quite early on, to be honest with you, because when we started seeing each other, I started to notice quite quickly suspicious behaviour. So obviously he was very suspicious around his telephone, going outside to use his telephone quite a lot. And so I became a bit of an investigator, and he ended up then saying that he liked to fluster on the horses. But it still took me a long time to work out how chronic he really was. It took me a few years. Because they're very secretive and they're very good at hiding. It's a secretive, hidden addiction, sadly.
It's so tough. It's so tough, and it's tough for both parties as well. It's not just yourselves as well. It extends out to other members of the family and friends and things like that as well. But if I could ask you, Peter, looking back, what do you think was the most important factor in your recovery?
Well, I mean, first of all, I'd like to say it went on for years, and in between games, in the old days, it was nothing like gambling is now with the internet and telephones and stuff. But you could still spend a lot of time and lose money on betting on a telephone account and just listening to the race over the telephone. But certainly, as time went on, and when I'd finished playing football, I had a lot of spare time, and it sort of snowballed even more. But the thing that fuels gambling is money. Why you've got money coming in, you think, oh well, I'll have a big win, tomorrow or the next day, and you kind of put the losses behind you because you're earning quite a bit of money. And that's really, and you're secretive, very secretive as a gambler and a gambling addict, as I became, without actually realizing it. It became part of my life. I thought it was a hobby, but it wasn't. I was addicted to it. And, of course, then I met Steph, and, she changed everything for me.
Yeah, changed your whole outlook on life and what you were doing. I think as well, I mean, looking at the time that you were doing it and the span that you've been doing it over, you kind of start justifying it to yourself that it's a hobby, like you say, and it's okay. It's just, and you actually always touch the money, and you're chasing the win all the time, and it's everywhere now. I mean, I see from my research as well, you have advocated for it not to be on football shirts, advertising boards. Since I discussed with my good lady as well that we were going to be having a chat, she's been very aware of the adverts that are coming on the TV. That's constantly, it's everywhere, and it must be so hard to say, right, I've dealt with it, but it's like I say, it's everywhere, and for yourself as well. Obviously, Steph, having to monitor that, it's very tough.
I think once Peter got, he used to gamble on his laptop, and I was really shocked because I'd wake up in the middle of the night and he wouldn't be beside me. He'd be downstairs gambling on Australian football. Sorry, not football. Horse racing. And then when he got his mobile phone, it just imploded. Because you're literally walking around with a 24-hour casino in your pocket. Pop-ups, as your wife is now finding, is huge. So I think it was so difficult for him to come away, and the withdrawal really shocked me. Recovery, it's a long recovery from gambling addiction. And you asked earlier about what drove Peter into his recovery. I never gave him an ultimatum, ever. I never put that pressure on him because I could see he was living with immense mental pressure. The shackles of the bookie was completely wrapped around him. So I really tried a more gentle way, didn't I, Pete?
Yeah, she obviously Steph worked in NHS for 20 years, and she got experience of
not in addiction though.
No, not in addiction. It was kind of a new thing for her. But she made me realise it was an illness. That's the first thing. And certainly when I finished playing football, which was in the mid-90s, and then the laws changed in 2005, where it was you could put a lot more things came out. Although I was basically on horse racing, you'd have occasionally the roulette wheel, but that was about it. But now it's just saturated with different products, and it's so easy to lose a lot of money in a short space of time, and that's probably the worst thing about gambling addiction. You can lose a fortune in a very short space of time. And one of my biggest things now is we've managed to get the shirts off, advertising off the front of shirts from the start of next season. But that's only a part of it, and I think the advertising side of it has got to be looked at, because the thing that one of the reasons besides Steph's helping me, was the amount of suicides that people were committing, young people,
and footballers,
and it was unbelievable, and they felt they couldn't get any help, and that type of thing. So I think the advertising has got to be looked at. Everywhere you go, it's thrown in your face, and especially for youngsters.
Yeah, I mean, asking Steph, how did you actually get Peter to stop gambling then? What steps did you put into place along with obviously the support you gave him?
I just kept telling him that he had an illness and that it wasn't his fault, and that when he was ready, I'd be there to help him go through it. And I just started using the word illness and not blaming him. And I also used to use the word lose a lot. So he was beginning to feel uncomfortable, and he had proposed to me, so he wanted to get married. And I used it sort of as a carrot dangler, really, to say to him, well, the whole time I used to call it the bookie. The whole time the bookie's around, we're never going to get married. We're not going to be able to go to Barbados. We're not going to be able to do all the things that you want to do with me, because I'm not doing it on a credit card. And I think that started to knock through that actually I'm just chasing losses. I'm not going to have a big win. And so I think it was that, as Pete calls me, a bit of a Brian Clough. I got into his head a little bit. But it's interesting because as a partner or a loved one, you have a third party in your relationship. So when I met Peter, it was no different really to having an affair. So the gambling took him away. He was very absent from the relationship psychologically and emotionally. And I was determined to beat the bookie. I was determined to win him and get all of him. I didn't want to share him. And I think it was that sort of psychology really that helped me through.
I used to get the Racing Post delivered every day, and obviously, Steph would go off to work, and I had to sort of work on, but it wasn't every day, and I'd sit and read the form and what have you, and Steph would just say, "Oh, see, you've got the losing post again."
Yeah, it's getting in the head. It's covered. Look,
book is going to be happy. And then one day she was looking at something. I said, "What are you looking at?" And she was looking at houses,
No, I didn't tell you.
Oh, didn't you tell me? Sorry.
When your roof is tired and seen better days, don't replace it. Reach out to Kingdom Coatings, the roof protection specialists. Our specialist roof coating has helped thousands of homeowners across Scotland protect their roofs by providing resistance to adverse weather and helping to extend the lifespan of tiles. And with our 10-year peace of mind guarantee, we know protecting your home is important. It's your kingdom after all. Contact the experts today for a free no-obligation quote. And remember, prevention can be the best cure.
He really went on a bad bender. So towards the end, well-being was seriously getting affected, and you were seriously chasing losses, weren't you? And you'd had a bad weekend, and I put on the laptop that I would been looking for somewhere else to buy. I didn't tell you that, but I knew that he'd looked at it.
It's there, yeah. It's there.
I mean, I'd obviously, fallen in love with Steph, and we were getting on great, but I a lot of things. It wasn't just one thing. I mean, you've got to be able to do it yourself, But obviously, I wanted a life with Steph, and at the same time, though, I wanted to be free of all the problems that it brings, even relationships, because you get very sort of detached and quite lonely when you're a gambler, because you probably put on people around you, but you haven't got the time to start making long friendships, and that's the sort of thing that the gamblers have to address, really.
Yeah, it's horrendous. Well, I certainly think you've beat the bookie, and you've got your biggest win sitting right next to you there, Peter. So, when was the last time you actually put a bet on? I mean, how far back are we looking? When did you start?
9 years this month.
9 years.
Look at how proud she is.
Yeah, 9 years. Yeah.
I always say to clients and loved ones that contact me, and gambling addicts that contact me, and they'll say, they'll never change, or they can't do it, or a gambler says, I can't do it. And I go, if this man can do it after 40 years, and there's no one can tell me they can't do it. Anyone can.
And it was the best day of my life. I mean, you go through a little bit of a withdrawal thing. But once you come out that side of it, you realise, that every day, is going to be a positive one, and we were building for our future, Thankfully, I did put some things in place so it wasn't, all doom and gloom sort of financially when I quit. But obviously, I'd have been a far richer man than what I am now. But there's a lot of people who think, oh, I can never give up. Blah, blah. You can, and the day you do it is the day that you have a far better life and freedom from all the hassle and stress of basically just losing your money down the drain, because there's very few people win in the long term. You might get a few who say they do, but no, a lot of gamblers keep quiet about their losses.
Yeah, I remember. I mean, the saying I always reverted back to was, "You'll never beat the bookie, because the bookie's always going to win. If they didn't win it for you now, they'll win it for you later, and vice versa. And they can't run a business if they're not winning. There's only going to be one winner. So it's just trying to change the mentality. Yeah.
It is. I mean, you think about it. There's more and more betting companies coming out now on the internet from all over the world, and the ones that have been there for years, Ladbrokes, William Hill, Corals, these sort of ones, they're getting bigger and bigger and bigger. So where's the money coming from? It's coming from punters like myself and people who are probably losing more than they should do.
Yeah, and the thing is, we're not anti-gambling. There's millions of people that enjoy having a flutter and a day at the races. But the thing is, with football, it's completely imploded within football, and they are vulnerable. You have got vulnerable people, and you have got children around that, and that's something obviously that we advocate, is to make it safer. We're not anti-gambling, but make it safer and protect the vulnerable, as I say, particularly children.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's amazing. You can see the work and the effort that you have put into to make this the way it should be. And I'm just going to ask Peter, what advice would you give to someone who is currently struggling with gambling but doesn't know where to start?
Well, thankfully, there's a lot more help out there now. But obviously, whatever it is, just you can find it on the internet. It's not hard to find. But make sure you get proper help, get advice, and start the treatment. There's different types of treatments. I mean, I had my own therapist. I was living with her, but obviously Steph is the therapist now, and she'd be probably the best person to ask on that. But you've got companies like Be Gambler Aware and everything else. The one thing I would say is there's a lot of safeguards put on now, set your own limits and that, which is fine. But the problem is when you are, what I call an addictive gambler, you won't look at those sort of things. All you'll look at is where the next bet is, and that's the big problem.
Yeah, I mean, gone are the days when you used to be able to, put on like a football coupon, and the problem now is you could have 5 teams on, for example, and you put that on a Saturday. It's just a small coupon. But now, within 20 minutes, if your coupon's down, you can go right onto your phone and bet on the exact same games again. And it's kind of like you're chasing the win before the game's even halfway on.
Yeah. A lot of people watch a football match and don't enjoy it because all they're doing is gambling on something may happen in the game. But what you could say about where people could go?
Yeah, so I think first off is because you will be surprised, Barry, you will have reached out to someone that's really struggling. And we've done probably about 190 interviews and documentaries all around the world, and you will be surprised. There will be one person at least that's listening to you and listening to this that's really struggling, that's living through hell, and just reach out to us through here, get in touch with Barry. There's so and don't pay for it, because there's loads of charities that will help for nothing, but also for your loved ones and your family member, or there may be a mate, someone that you can trust. Someone will understand. I've got a bit of a problem. It's got a bit out of hand. It's as simple as that. Because the stigma and the shame that's attached to it is something else we work at reducing. Stop stigma. It's okay to talk about this.
And the thing says, even if you feel the depths, you've lost everything, you've borrowed money, you owe money, you've committed fraud in some cases, and a lot of people are going to prison, and there's somebody every day will commit suicide in the UK, and these are not, these are sort of teenagers to, early 20s, and it's unbelievable. You can no matter what situation you're in, you can get out of it. Don't think you can't, because you can, and really listen and take advice, because when you do give up, and it's not easy, it will be the best day of your life.
I mean, I work with Epic Restart Foundation. That's a charity. And that you can just go online and fill out a form, and somebody will ring you straight away. So there's so many great charities out there that are waiting to help. Yes, there's a lot more. There wasn't when Peter gave.
I'll also add on what you said. My inbox is always open there. I've said that for my very first podcast. I mean, I've only done about a dozen podcasts, but I always say that where it's mental health, it's illnesses, any sort, my inbox is always open, and I can always put people, viewers, etc., in touch with the right connection. So if everybody could bear that in mind as well, that'd be brilliant. But and
also for any families or friends that are a bit worried, they can contact you. It doesn't just necessarily have to be the gambler.
Sometimes just an impartial person as well, somebody that's just looking at it from the outside and saying, look, here's my honest opinion on what I think could help, especially off the back of speaking with yourselves. I've educated me a little bit as well. I've just got a question, final question to put to both of you, and I've put for Peter and Steph. Tell us about the global work, which you've tapped into already, but that you've been doing to raise awareness of gambling addiction and the government legislation changes you've been advocating around gambling. Now, I've looked into this. This is amazing what you have done. If you could just tell me, like, the seminars and different things you are doing.
Yeah, I mean, you can talk about what you're doing with the family members and stuff like that. From my point of view, I think it's just protecting the youngsters. It's basically the advertising, I think, really needs to be looked at. There's far too much advertising, and I know they say there's put safeguards in place, but people who are going to get addicted won't look at those things.
I think the safeguards, sorry to interrupt, actually, and I'm just looking at it for somebody who's never played the game, and I'm just looking at it as a host, but also a viewer, as they're everywhere. It's impossible to keep away from it. It's like the safeguards that they've put in place, I actually feel, and this is just my opinion, but I actually feel the safeguards are in place to protect the bookie rather than protect the customer. It's no, I'm not asking for your opinion on that. This is just my opinion, but looking at it from the outside, you've got certain companies and they'll say, oh, we encourage safer gambling, and then the next thing it flashes up 15-1 on a certain odds on this game that's coming on in 10 minutes. I just feel it's very contradictory.
Yeah, it's very, there's a lot of different games that probably need to be looked at, that you have to gamble very quickly, and can lose a lot of money very quickly. Like I say, mine was my love of horse racing, but you can still lose a lot of money, even if you're gambling for quite a bit of the day. But there's a lot of things, especially the advertising. And football, it's unbelievable. It's round the ground at most televised matches. It's flash it up. You can't not see it. And we were obviously very pleased that they took the names off the front of the show.
Especially the kids and all that.
That's just a very small part of it. There's a lot more needs looked at.
And then also, so we went live with our story on the Good Morning Britain Breakfast show, and we just thought we'd come out and just tell our story and hopefully save a few lives and inspire some lives, and it just imploded. So our journey's been incredible. We have a book that we had published and sold out virtually, and then last November we were flown out by the Norwegian government to Oslo to talk about the work that we've both been doing. As I say, spoke at global level, haven't we? And
they've probably way ahead of our country actually in terms of safeguarding and the banks cooperating with
We've worked with the parliamentary all party with our government, and we wrote in the white paper and we supported the levy. So we've gone on to do huge amount.
I'm very proud of Steph because we were talking about things, and basically, all right, you get the gambling addict, i.e. me, and you go and you put yourself into treatment and try and overcome your own problems, which you can do that, definitely can do that, but you leave a lot of debris behind with relationships. Maybe you owe people money, I'm not saying that happened with me, but it does happen where people's relationships fall apart, family members, mums and dads helping the son or daughter, and what we think is that, and Steph does, those people who from the addict, they need help as well. So when the addict comes out of treatment, they're in a far better frame of mind, and maybe all their problems have been cleared up financially, etc. So the addict walks into a better atmosphere with recovery, and that's what Steph has been brilliant at, and he's been so successful. People have just said, I don't know what you could have done without you, Steph. We feel far easier now.
I always describe it as a gambler is like sitting in a room smoking a cigarette, and all the children and the family and the friends are in there with no open doors, so they're breathing in smoke. So gambling harm. People, the industry don't understand and appreciate the harm that goes with it. It destroys lives, it can take lives, it ruins lives, and and that affects the loved ones all around them as well.
Yeah, I mean, I had a wee look at the book. I believe as well, great generosity. Both yourselves are going to sign a copy of your book, Saved, and I'm going to put that as a giveaway to one of my viewers as well. But I mean, knowing that what you have achieved now, and you've came out the other side, and I mean, that's your biggest one there, knowing what you're doing. I think that I can see it in you. That's what motivates you now, is to just keep helping others.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Yeah, we'll keep plugging away and knocking on the door, and hopefully, people will keep listening. Like I say, Norway, they're well ahead of what we're doing in this country, so it can be done.
Keep up the great work, Barry.
Well done, Barry.
Keep building this up. We are talking
it.
about the side of football, unfortunately.
But this is the big picture. I mean, I talk about, and Peter will know is better than even both of us, but playing the game and unleashing all these wee stories and all these wee funny stories. But there's also a side there that's really serious. And I mean, I don't want to rattle off names. We all know different English football players that have had different problems, whether it's gambling, whether it's alcoholism, etc. But I think you're leading the way for a far better future for the upcoming footballers. I spoke to a guy who just retired, and he said that. He says, I'm so fortunate to live in the era that you have helped create as well. So thanks for all the good work you do. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Barry. Thanks for putting the word out there.
Yeah, well done.
It's lovely. If you wouldn't mind resharing the video for me, that'll help get a lot of exposure as well. And pretty much, I'm going to say thanks very much for coming on the podcast. Can't thank you enough. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Thank you to Kingdom Coatings for their incredible sponsorship.